Carter walked through the quiet streets of Dayton, Ohio, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the pavement. The city hummed softly, the familiar drone of traffic blending with distant sirens, church bells, and the faint buzz of. It was ordinary, safe, predictable, and yet beneath the veneer of everyday normalcy carried a past most would never suspect. To her neighbors, she was just another aerospace engineer, a woman who worked long hours at the Wright Research Lab, mentoring students and occasionally volunteering at local STEM programs. But to a select few in the corridors of the Pentagon and among the elite fighter pilot community, her name, or rather her call sign, meant something entirely different: Eagle One. She paused outside a small she frequented, the smell of roasted coffee beans wafting toward her as she debated stepping inside. Loved the anonymity of civilian life. After years of flying supersonic jets, testing classified aircraft, and executing missions that were never spoken of, this ordinary life felt like a sanctuary. She thrived on routine: morning runs along the Great Miami River, lunch with her students, evenings tinkering with drones she designed in her garage. Most days, she could almost forget the dangerous, adrenaline-fueled life she once led. Almost. Almost because sometimes memories surged unbidden, flashes of jet engines screaming through the sky, the thunder of afterburners, the acrid smell of jet fuel, and the intense precision of aerial maneuvers at Mach speeds. Her fingers itched for the controls, for the thrill of commanding a machine that could defy gravity and outmaneuver anything on Earth. But those days were behind her, or so she thought. Civilian life offered comfort, stability, and a quiet sense of accomplishment, but it also carried a gnawing emptiness. The skis were quiet now, and yet she could feel them calling, like a distant voice she couldn't ignore. As she entered the barista greeted her by name, the familiarity comforting in a way only small towns can provide. Ordered a latte, black, her mind partially elsewhere. She reviewed emails on her tablet while waiting, scanning through technical reports, student project submissions, and the occasional casual note from colleagues. Nothing unusual, until she opened a message marked with the highest security clearance she hadn't seen in years. The subject line was simple, almost clinical: request, immediate assistance, classified. Her heart rate spiked. She stared at the message, rereading the text carefully, ensuring she hadn't misread it. It wasn't a phishing attempt or a bureaucratic error. The Pentagon itself was calling her back. After years of civilian life, after deliberately leaving the adrenaline-soaked world behind, they were summoning her. The message didn't contain explanations, only coordinates, instructions, and an urgent timestamp. Leaned back in her chair, trying to steady her breathing. She felt the old tug of duty, that impossible magnet pulling her toward a life she had worked so hard to leave behind. Memories came flooding back. She remembered her first day at the Air Force Academy, the intensity of the training, the rigor, and the sense of purpose that had defined every waking moment. She remembered her first solo flight in a fighter jet, the roar of engines vibrating through her bones, the sky stretching endlessly in every direction. She remembered classified missions over deserts and mountains, missions that had tested her limits, missions that had demanded every ounce of skill and courage she possessed. And she remembered her call sign, Eagle One, a symbol of her precision, daring, and leadership. Yet here she was, living among civilians, her extraordinary abilities hidden behind the mask of normality. She had chosen this path deliberately, seeking peace after years of intensity, choosing to apply her talents quietly to civilian projects. Her drone prototypes were innovative, her research contributions respected, but it was a far cry from the high-stakes life she had once led. Still, the pull of the skis was undeniable. The message was not just a request. It was a summons back to the edge, a call she could neither ignore nor refuse lightly. For the next hour, she wrestled with her decision. She imagined what it would mean to return to classified missions, to don the uniform again, to sit in the cockpit of an advanced fighter jet capable of speeds she hadn't touched in years. She imagined leaving behind the comfort of her routine, the stability of civilian life, and stepping into danger, uncertainty, and secrecy. And yet, she knew deep down that she was meant for this, meant for situations that demanded her experience, her intellect, and her courage. Civilian life had been a pause, a breathing space, not the end of her story. By evening, packed a small bag, careful to leave no trace of her sudden departure. She drove to the airfield in silence, the city lights reflecting off the windshield like tiny beacons guiding her forward. As she approached the designated hangar, the hum of distant jet engines reached her ears, reverberating through her chest in a way that made her pulse quicken. She stepped out of her car, feeling the crisp air against her face, tasting the faint tang of jet fuel carried on the wind. Everything in her past, every skill, every instinct was awakening. Security personnel led her through a series of checkpoints with a precision that mirrored the operations she once commanded. Her mind scanned the environment, noticing every detail, the layout of the hangars, the configuration of aircraft, the readiness of personnel. She wasn't just returning, she was already assessing, already planning. At the heart of the facility, a black SUV awaited her, the driver instructed to take her to a secure briefing room. As the vehicle roared down the runway, stared through the window at the aircraft silhouetted against the twilight sky, a sense of destiny settling in. Inside the briefing room, the air was tense, charged with urgency. Officials from the Pentagon stood waiting, their expressions grave but professional, listened carefully as they outlined a threat, rogue drones operating beyond conventional control, a situation only someone with her combined experience in flight operations and advanced aerospace technology could counter. Her heart beat faster, not from fear, but from the unmistakable rush of purpose. This was what she had been trained for. This was her world, the one she had temporarily left behind. For the first time in years, felt fully alive. Her hands trembled slightly, not from nerves but from anticipation. The life of a civilian engineer was fulfilling, but this was clarity. This was the skis, the mission, the adrenaline, the responsibility she had been born for. She straightened, met the gaze of the officials, and said the words that would mark her return. "I'll do it." In that moment, Carter was no longer just a civilian. She was Eagle One, ready to reclaim the sky. The black SUV slid smoothly along the desert highway, its tires humming against the asphalt, the Nevada sun dipping toward the horizon. Carter stared out the window, her mind running through scenarios she hadn't considered in years. Each mile took her further from the quiet life she had built in Dayton and deeper into a world she had only ever revisited in memories and dreams. The Pentagon's message had been urgent, deliberate. She was needed, specifically, uniquely, and the weight of that responsibility pressed on her chest even as a flicker of excitement danced in her veins. The vehicle entered a sprawling, nondescript airbase, gates flanked by armed personnel and surveillance towers stretching into the sky, the kind of place civilians rarely glimpsed. His fingers drummed lightly on her lap, a subconscious echo of her pre-flight rituals. Every detail she noticed, the security protocols, the patterns of patrols, the placement of radar antennas, was logged silently, instinctively. Training she thought long dormant surged to life. She was no longer the engineer in Dayton. She was the pilot who had flown aircraft, so advanced they had no name in the public domain. Once inside the secure building, was escorted to a briefing room bathed in cold fluorescent light. Screens lined the walls, displaying drone trajectories, satellite feeds, and tactical maps. Several officers stood waiting, tall, rigid suits pressed impeccably. The senior officer, a stern man in his 50s with sharp eyes, motioned for her to sit. "Carter," he began, voice clipped but respectful, "we have a situation that requires your expertise. Your civilian work is impressive, but this is beyond ordinary capability." Leaned forward, listening intently as the briefing commenced. Rogue drones, apparently hacked and operating autonomously, had breached restricted airspace over multiple states. The threat wasn't conventional. The drones were agile, sophisticated, and their programming adaptive. No standard interception protocols had succeeded. Civilian engineers and Air Force pilots had tried and failed. And that was why was here. someone who understood both the theoretical engineering of unmanned aerial systems and the tactical realities of high-speed flight. Her pulse quickened. She hadn't anticipated returning to action this soon, yet the familiar rush, anticipation, adrenaline, and the intellectual challenge was intoxicating. Mind ran simulations as the officers spoke, calculating drone speeds, intercept vectors, and risk zones. She realized immediately that her combined skills as a test pilot and aerospace engineer gave her a perspective that the current team lacked. While they saw drones as threats, she saw patterns, weaknesses, and opportunities to turn the advantage. "What's unusual," the officer continued, "is their coordination. They operate like a squadron, communicating, reacting. We've never encountered anything like this. Our best F-22 pilots can't engage without endangering civilians. We need someone who can anticipate, strategize, and lead under pressure." He paused, studying her. "Someone like you." Inhaled slowly, her training kicking in. Years of decision-making under extreme pressure, supersonic speeds, and combat scenarios flooded her memory. She remembered missions where failure wasn't an option, where every decision meant life or death, where instinct and intellect merged seamlessly. This was another one of those moments, though under a civilian guise, and yet it demanded everything she had, and more. "Show me the drone's flight data," she said, her voice calm but authoritative. The officers nodded and displayed three-dimensional projections of the intruding UAVs, analyzed trajectories, noting slight inconsistencies in their evasive maneuvers. "They're adaptive," she murmured. "Not autonomous in the traditional sense. Someone is controlling them remotely but using predictive AI to make real-time decisions." Her mind raced. "We'll need a combination of counter-drone tactics and manned intercepts." But the real advantage lies in anticipating the operator's next move. The officers exchanged impressed glances. Continued, drawing a makeshift map on the briefing table, outlining interception points, potential threats, and fallback strategies. Her finger traced precise arcs, marking calculated risks. "We'll deploy F-22s at staggered altitudes," she explained, "but we must integrate human decision-making with drone intercept simulations. I can coordinate both, but I'll need full access to the squadron and flight control systems." The room was silent. No one doubted her capability. Her reputation preceded her, even if most had never witnessed it firsthand. After the technical discussion, a young lieutenant approached, nervously clearing his throat. "Ma'am, the squadron, the pilots, they've been briefed on a potential civilian liaison, but—" He faltered, hesitant, raised an eyebrow. "But what?" she prompted, a subtle steel beneath her calm tone. "They don't know your history," he admitted. "They've heard rumors about Eagle One. They've speculated, but they don't expect you to walk in here and take command." A faint smile touched her lips. That was exactly how she wanted it. Let them underestimate her. Let them see the calm exterior, the unassuming civilian, before they realized the force they were facing. Eyes flicked to the flight simulations on the screens. The drone's adaptive patterns called for decisive action, and she was the only one who could synthesize strategy, engineering, and tactical execution in real time. The remainder of the evening was a whirlwind. Was escorted to the hangar where the F-22s were stationed, the sound of jet engines reverberating like a heartbeat through the massive facility. Pilots, young and seasoned, observed her with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. She introduced herself simply, no fanfare, no titles, just Carter. They noted her composure, her quiet confidence, and the precision in her movements, how she handled the flight manuals, how her eyes scanned instruments with practiced ease. Some sensed something extraordinary, but most remained wary, waiting to see if the civilian could actually contribute. Finally, she approached one of the jets, a sleek F-22 Raptor gleaming under the hangar lights, ran her fingers lightly along the fuselage, a ritual older than her civilian life. She inspected instruments, checked controls, and settled into the cockpit with an ease born of years of mastery. Heart steady, mind alert, she ran simulation systems, her presence commanding attention. The pilots watched in silence, the tension palpable. A young lieutenant leaned to his colleague and whispered, "Could it be Eagle One?" The older pilot froze, recognition dawning, eyes widening. Heard nothing, yet she sensed their shift in demeanor. The room changed, respect replacing doubt, awe blending with curiosity. In that moment understood the duality she now carried. Civilian by appearance, legend by essence. She had left this world, but it had never truly let go of her. The briefing concluded late into the night. Was given full clearance, operational details, and access to the squadron's mission systems. She absorbed everything, her mind already calculating, simulating, and strategizing. Outside, the desert night was quiet, stars shimmering above like distant beacons. Felt the familiar pull of the skis, the electric anticipation that only high-stakes flight could provide. This was her life's purpose reawakened, her skills called back to service, her call sign, Eagle One, ready to soar again. As she prepared to retire for a few hours before the mission briefing, stood at the edge of the runway, eyes scanning the horizon. Somewhere out there, the rogue drones waited, unaware that their adversary had returned. She inhaled deeply, savoring the stillness, the weight of responsibility, and the thrill of what was to come. Duty, instinct, and legacy merged within her. Carter, civilian by choice, pilot by destiny, was back, and the sky, vast and endless, was hers to command. The next morning, the Nevada sun rose over the sprawling airbase, casting long, golden shadows across the hangars. Carter stepped onto the tarmac, the desert wind tugging at her jacket, carrying the faint tang of jet fuel. Around her, F-22 Raptors gleamed like silver predators, their sleek forms reflecting the early light. A squadron of pilots clad in flight suits stood in formation, their expressions a mix of curiosity, caution, and barely concealed skepticism. A civilian. Leading them, most found the notion preposterous. His boots clicked sharply against the concrete as she approached the squadron. She kept her expression neutral, her eyes scanning each pilot in the same disciplined, analytical way she had once scanned every cockpit, every formation, every potential threat. Years of experience made her observe not just faces but posture, subtle nervous tics that betrayed confidence or insecurity. She understood that leadership required both presence and performance. They needed to see her competence, not just hear her words. "Good morning," she said plainly, her voice calm but commanding. "I'm Carter. I'll be coordinating today's intercept simulations and assessing our strategy for the rogue drones." Her words were simple, unembellished, but carried an authority that belied her civilian attire. The pilots exchanged glances, some skeptical, others intrigued. Among them was Captain Jason, a decorated pilot with a reputation for precision and discipline. He studied her quietly, unconvinced that a civilian could manage anything in this airspace. The squadron gathered around the flight simulators, stepped forward, her fingers tracing the controls as she powered up a multi-screen simulation. The holographic drones appeared instantly, weaving intricate patterns in the digital sky. "These are not ordinary drones," she began, pointing at the data. "They're adaptive, reactive, and coordinated. Whoever is controlling them understands tactical engagement. A conventional intercept will fail. We need precision, prediction, and split-second coordination." The pilots watched in silence. Her calm, measured tone, paired with a sharp understanding of both engineering and aerial tactics, began to shift the room's energy. They realized that she wasn't just a civilian talking about theory. She could execute, anticipate, and solve problems in ways that only someone with her experience could. "Let's see what you've got," Jason said finally, the faintest edge of challenge in his voice. "Step into the simulator, show us you can handle these drones in real time." Nodded, she slipped into the simulator, adjusting the seat instinctively. The controls felt natural, almost like an extension of her body. She ran a sequence of maneuvers, her fingers and eyes moving in perfect synchronization. The holographic drones darted and flanked, responding to simulated countermeasures but anticipated each movement. Her fingers danced across controls, adjusting speed, vector, and trajectory, neutralizing virtual threats with elegance and precision. A collective murmur ran through the room as the pilots watched. "How is she doing that?" whispered a young lieutenant. She's anticipating every move before it even happens." Jason's eyes narrowed as he focused on the display. Recognition slowly dawned on him. The call sign she had once carried, Eagle One, had legendary status among fighter pilots, and now before him in person was the woman who had earned it. "It can't be," he muttered under his breath. Finished the simulation flawlessly, neutralizing the drones without a single misstep. She powered down the system and turned to face the squadron, her expression calm, almost serene. "Not bad," she said casually, a hint of a smile on her lips. "Now imagine the real thing in full airspace with operational drones and live threats. The principles are the same. Execution requires focus, trust, and split-second decisions. Mistakes are not an option." Jason stepped forward, his skepticism replaced by something between awe and respect. "Eagle One," he whispered, almost to himself. The room froze at the words. Others began to recognize the magnitude of her presence, the legacy she carried. Stories of her supersonic flights, her daring maneuvers, and her record-breaking achievements had circulated in hushed tones, but few had ever witnessed her skill firsthand. Continued, outlining strategies for intercepting the rogue drones, combining advanced predictive algorithms with tactical formation flying. She mapped out flight paths, calculated optimal engagement angles, and integrated human decision-making with automated systems. Her dual expertise bridged the gap between engineering theory and aerial execution. Every adjustment, every command, demonstrated that she was not just a coordinator. She was a pilot who could outmaneuver the drones herself, if needed. By midday, the squadron's doubts had largely dissipated. Pilots who had been skeptical now watched her with renewed focus, absorbing her instructions, following her lead. His presence transformed the atmosphere from cautious politeness to energized collaboration. She began running live simulations with the pilots, guiding them through intricate aerial maneuvers, testing their reactions, and pushing them to anticipate drone behavior rather than simply react. During a brief pause, Jason approached her directly. "You really are Eagle One," he said, voice low, a mix of disbelief and admiration. "We've only heard the stories, but you're the real deal." Nodded, acknowledging the recognition without arrogance. "Stories don't matter," she said. "Results do, and we have work to do." The rest of the day was consumed with rigorous exercises, strategy refinement, and hands-on simulations. Insights transformed the squadron's approach, enhancing their ability to anticipate the drone's adaptive behavior. She guided each pilot individually, noting strengths and weaknesses, providing precise corrections and encouragement. Slowly but surely, the pilots began to see her as both a mentor and a leader, someone whose presence demanded respect and whose expertise was unmatched. By evening, the sun dipped low over the desert horizon, casting long shadows across the tarmac. Stepped out of the simulator, tired but invigorated. The squadron, now fully aware of her legacy, gathered around. There was no longer doubt, only respect, anticipation, and a sense of shared purpose. The civilian who had walked onto the base in the morning was now firmly recognized as a leader. Surveyed the pilots, her eyes reflecting both determination and calm authority. She understood the challenge ahead: rogue drones, sophisticated control, and high-stakes aerial interception. But she also knew this squadron, now united under her guidance, could accomplish what others had failed to achieve. They had seen her skill, experienced her insight, and understood the quiet confidence she carried. As the desert sky darkened, felt a sense of inevitability settle over her. She had returned to a world she had left behind, not as a visitor but as a commander, a strategist, and a pilot ready to reclaim her legacy. The pilots recognized her now, and with that recognition came trust, the most crucial element in any high-stakes mission. Eagle One was back, and the skis were about to witness her leadership once again. By the next morning, the Nevada airbase was alive with disciplined activity. The F-22 Raptors rested in their hangars, engines idling occasionally, their metallic surfaces glinting under the rising sun. Carter moved through the tarmac with measured precision, her eyes scanning the aircraft, the personnel, the radar arrays. She no longer felt like an outsider. After yesterday's simulations, the squadron's attitude had shifted. Skepticism had given way to curiosity, admiration, and for some, awe. The name Eagle One now carried tangible weight. She embodied it. Captain Jason approached her with a folder in hand. "You need to see this," he said, voice low, tinged with disbelief. He handed her a file containing reports, mission logs, and news clippings from years past. His eyes scanned the pages, memories flooding back. Her first supersonic flight, classified missions over hostile terrain, and test flights in aircraft so advanced they standard design parameters. Her accolades, once quietly celebrated in secret circles, were now being acknowledged in black and white documentation. The legends she had left behind were very real, and the squadron finally understood why. The other pilots lingered nearby, discreetly glancing at her as she absorbed the information. Reputation, once a whisper, was now confirmed through tangible evidence. Mission successes, records of high-risk flights, and commendations from commanders who had long since retired. They realized the magnitude of what they were witnessing. This civilian, seemingly ordinary and composed, had achieved feats that most could only dream of. Her call sign, Eagle One, was no longer a rumor. It was a legacy, alive and commanding attention. "Eagle One," Jason finally murmured aloud, more to himself than anyone else. The room fell silent. Others who recognized the name began to murmur, whispers spreading quickly, met their eyes calmly. She didn't need to boast or explain herself. The work she had done, the missions she had flown, spoke louder than any introduction. And now, with the squadron fully aware of her history, the dynamics had shifted. Trust was no longer tentative, it was instinctive. The briefing that followed was intense. Was brought into the central command room, walls lined with monitors displaying live drone trajectories, satellite feeds, and potential threat zones. Officials outlined the rogue drone situation in detail. The drones were autonomous yet adaptive, controlled remotely by unknown operators with sophisticated predictive AI. Standard interception protocols had repeatedly failed, leaving civilian areas at risk and compromising national security. It was a challenge that demanded someone with both tactical flight experience and technical insight, someone like. She analyzed the data methodically. The drone's flight patterns were erratic but logical, demonstrating an operator who understood aerial combat principles. Noted slight inconsistencies in their maneuvers, subtle flaws that revealed exploitable patterns. She began sketching potential intercept strategies on a digital map, combining tactical formations with predictive algorithms. Each calculation was deliberate, precise, and rooted in decades of aerial experience. She wasn't just interpreting data. She was anticipating behavior, predicting responses, and mapping out decisive countermeasures. "The operator behind these drones is highly skilled," said, voice calm yet firm. "But there's a limit to adaptive AI when human intuition is introduced. If we engage strategically, we can neutralize them without risking civilians. But it requires coordination, precision, and absolute trust among all pilots involved. That's where I come in." Her eyes swept the room, settling on each pilot in turn. This mission isn't about individual skill. It's about unified execution, anticipation, and decisive action. The squadron listened, spellbound. The earlier skepticism had melted away, replaced by respect and attention. Presence commanded authority not because of rank or title, but because of demonstrated expertise, confidence, and the clarity of her instructions. She seamlessly bridged the worlds of engineering theory and operational execution, showing the pilots how their actions could integrate with predictive models to achieve maximum efficiency. After the strategic discussion, was given access to the full F-22 fleet and control systems. She moved through the hangar, inspecting aircraft, confirming readiness, and checking systems herself. Pilots began to follow her lead, observing her methodical approach, nodding her attention to detail. His reputation as Eagle One was now fully validated, not a story, not a legend, but reality. And with that recognition came responsibility. She wasn't just guiding simulations. She was preparing for real aerial engagement, where split-second decisions would mean life or death. By mid-afternoon, the squadron convened for a full-scale exercise briefing. Strategies were reviewed, refined, and assigned to individual pilots. Each maneuver, each formation was explained in detail, with contingencies for unexpected threats. The pilots practiced communication protocols, anticipating her commands and reinforcing coordination. The experience shone through every instruction, her calm decisiveness instilling confidence. Where there had been doubt, now there was focus. Where there had been hesitation, now there was readiness. During a short break, Jason approached her again. "I underestimated you," he admitted quietly, his tone almost reverent. "I've read the reports, heard the stories, but seeing you in action, directing the simulations, it's remarkable." Gave a modest nod. "It's not about me," she said softly. "It's about making sure this team succeeds, about protecting people. And sometimes it's about returning when you're needed most." The sun began to set over the desert, casting a warm orange glow across the hangar floor. Took a moment to step outside, looking at the aircraft lined up against the fading light. Memories of past flights surfaced, the roar of engines, the tension of combat, the exhilaration of mastery in the sky. She realized how much she had missed this world, the precision, the responsibility, and the thrill of working with elite pilots. This was not civilian life. This was purpose. As darkness settled, the squadron gathered once more for final preparations. Its recognition as Eagle One had changed everything. The pilots now looked to her not only as a strategist but as a leader, someone whose instincts, experience, and calm decisiveness could be trusted in the most dangerous scenarios. The rogue drones awaited, unpredictable and lethal, but the squadron was no longer hesitant or divided. They were ready, guided by the legend reborn. Returned to the briefing room, reviewing every detail one last time. Every maneuver, every contingency, every calculated risk was accounted for. She felt the familiar surge of anticipation, the thrill of preparation, and the calm focus that only experience could produce. Outside, the Nevada desert stretched endlessly, silent yet charged with potential. The squadron had recognized her. The Pentagon had called her back. And now, the real test was about to begin. In that quiet moment, Carter allowed herself a brief thought. She had returned as a civilian, underestimated, almost overlooked. Yet her past, her skill, and her instincts had ensured she was no longer just a name whispered in legend. She was Eagle One, recognized, respected, and ready to take flight once more. The skis awaited, and with it, the challenges she had trained her entire life to face. Dawn broke over the Nevada desert, painting the sky in hues of orange and violet. Carter walked across the tarmac, her boots clicking against concrete, the chill of early morning air cutting through the warmth of her flight suit. The F-22 Raptors rested like predators awaiting command. Today, simulations would end and the squadron would take to the skis. Its pulse quickened, not from fear but from anticipation. This was the moment she had been training for, mentally and physically. The rogue drones awaited somewhere above, unpredictable, adaptive, and dangerous, but the squadron now trusted her implicitly. Captain Jason approached, his eyes clear with focus. "All systems green. You ready, Eagle One?" Nodded, the call sign feeling heavier than ever, a reminder of past missions, victories, and responsibilities. She climbed into her jet, adjusting the seat instinctively, fingers brushing the controls with a familiarity no civilian experience could replicate. Every switch, every display, every system check flowed like muscle memory. The cockpit enveloped her like an old friend, a metallic shell capable of incredible feats, awaiting her command. The engines roared to life, vibration humming through her body, the scent of fuel sharp in the enclosed space. Ran through pre-flight checks with meticulous precision. The other pilots followed suit, trusting her timing, her decisions, her authority. As the Raptors lined up on the runway, the hum of anticipation matched the thrum in her chest. The skis above were silent, deceptive in their calm, but knew the drones were already in motion, testing, probing, and calculating. "Let's move," said through the comms, voice steady, confident, commanding attention without arrogance. The squadron lifted off in formation, climbing smoothly, engines screaming in controlled fury. Led the line, scanning airspace monitoring systems and predicting drone maneuvers. The first drones appeared on radar, fast, small, agile, behaving as if they had learned human tactics. Eyes flicked between instruments and horizon, calculating intercept vectors, anticipating their evasive patterns. Eagle 1 to squadron, she commanded. Maintain staggered formation, keep visual on drones, adjust speed to 200 knots above baseline. Countermeasures ready. Follow my lead. The pilots obeyed without hesitation. Trust was implicit, earned over the past 2 days through demonstrations of skill and intellect. Guided them through a series of maneuvers designed to corral the drones into predictable paths while minimizing risk to civilians. Every command was precise, every movement deliberate. The drones reacted almost instinctively, adapting, dodging, testing the squadron. Its pulse quickened in a familiar rhythm, the thrill of anticipation, the rush of strategy in real time, the exhilaration of command. She guided the squadron through sharp turns, rolls, and climbs, forcing the drones into intercept zones she had pre-calculated. One drone released countermeasures, a cascade of flares meant to distract and confuse. Anticipated, issuing split-second adjustments. Stay sharp. Flares are decoys. Maintain formation and lock targets visually. Jason followed, trusting her judgment implicitly. Copy that, Eagle 1, he replied. Around them, the desert stretched endlessly below, oblivious to the deadly dance above. His focus was absolute, mind and body attuned to aircraft and airspace. She executed a daring maneuver, banking sharply to avoid drone fire, rolling into a climb that placed her directly in the drone's path while minimizing exposure for the squadron. The tactic worked. The drones adjusted predictably, falling into her planned trap. Target locked, said, eyes scanning the HUD. She coordinated counter-drone measures, guiding squadron pilots to neutralize threats efficiently. Each action was precise, intentional, and effective. Pilots began responding faster, anticipating her commands, executing maneuvers she had predicted in real time. The synergy was seamless. Civilian background in engineering merged with her military experience, allowing her to see angles, behaviors, and vulnerabilities that others could not. By the time the first wave of drones was neutralized, the squadron's confidence in her was unshakable. A sudden alert flashed, multiple drones approaching from unexpected vectors. Reacted instantly, coordinating evasive maneuvers while guiding intercepts. The pilots followed instinctively. Divert north quadrant, rotate formation, prepare active countermeasures, she barked. The Raptors shifted in unison, executing tight arcs, vertical climbs, and precision rolls. One drone veered unpredictably, nearly clipping a formation wingtip, but its rapid calculation and command prevented disaster. The squadron marveled at her composure under extreme pressure, calm, precise, and unflinching. After several intense minutes, the drones were neutralized, intercepted safely without civilian risk. Guided the squadron back into formation, engines humming, hearts still racing. The airspace was secure for now, and yet the squadron understood this was just the beginning. Pilots exchanged glances, nodding in unspoken acknowledgement of the gravity and skill involved. Finally exhaled, a mixture of relief and exhilaration washing over her. The simulation was real enough to feel life or death. Once back on the ground, the squadron gathered near the hangar. Jason approached, eyes wide with respect. Eagle 1, he said, voice steady but all laden. I don't know how to say this, but you just changed everything. I've never seen anyone handle that like you did. Smiled faintly, brushing off the praise with humility. It's not about me, she said. It's about preparation, anticipation, and execution. You all did your part perfectly. The drones are the problem, not the pilots. In the debriefing room, analyzed every maneuver, every intercept, and every near miss. She demonstrated how small adjustments in formation, speed, and trajectory could drastically reduce risk while increasing efficiency. Pilots listened intently, absorbing every lesson, mentally cataloging her strategies. This combination of engineering insight and flight experience was unmatched, bridging gaps between theory and practical application seamlessly. By the time the briefing ended, the squadron fully recognized her authority, not as a civilian, but as a leader, mentor, and pilot whose instincts were unparalleled. As night fell over the Nevada desert, stepped outside, looking at the darkened airfield. The F-22s rested silently, their shadows stretching across the tarmac, engines cooling from the day's high-intensity maneuvers. The thrill of flight still pulsed through her veins, the satisfaction of a mission executed flawlessly warming her chest. She realized she had returned not only to the skis but to her true purpose. Civilian life had offered stability, but nothing compared to the clarity, the adrenaline, and the responsibility of commanding both pilots and missions in real time. Felt a familiar pull, a magnetic, almost electric sensation that only flight, danger, and precision could provide. Rogue drones remained a threat, challenges yet to come, and each required a mind capable of anticipation, strategy, and courage. The squadron now trusted her implicitly. Eagle One was no longer a legend whispered among pilots. She was active, commanding, and fully recognized. The skis, endless and untamed, awaited her leadership once more. And Carter, civilian by day, pilot by destiny, was ready to soar. The day after the successful drone intercept, Carter remained at the Nevada Air Base, reviewing intelligence reports in the Secure Operations Center. Her brow furrowed, mind spinning as she connected patterns that others had overlooked. Initial scans had identified rogue drones operating autonomously, but further analysis revealed something far more sinister. The drones weren't acting randomly. They were part of a coordinated network, linked by encrypted communication, potentially weaponized, and controlled by unknown operatives with advanced knowledge of both aerospace technology and military tactics. His pulse quickened. This wasn't a simple intrusion. It was an orchestrated attack with a purpose beyond mere disruption. Someone had invested significant resources, knowledge, and planning into creating a system capable of evading the most sophisticated military defenses. The implications were staggering. Civilian areas, military installations, and national infrastructure could all be at risk if these drones were deployed globally. And only someone with her combined expertise in engineering, flight, and tactical strategy could counteract such a threat effectively. She leaned back in her chair, eyes scanning lines of encrypted code, trajectory reports, and satellite images. Patterns emerged, anomalies in the drone movements, repeated deviations in flight behavior, subtle signals that suggested remote human oversight. The operator was not just controlling the drones. They were learning, adapting, and attempting to predict human responses. Realized that this threat required a multi-layered solution, one that fused technical brilliance with practical aerial tactics. It was no longer just about intercepting rogue drones. It was about outthinking a highly intelligent adversary. Captain Jason approached quietly, holding a tablet displaying the latest reconnaissance data. He said, voice low and cautious, "We've noticed some unusual patterns. These drones, they're moving in coordinated swarms we haven't seen before. It's almost like they're testing our response, mapping our tactics, waiting for the right moment." His eyes sharpened. "Exactly," she replied. "The operator isn't just observing, they're probing. They want to find weaknesses, exploit gaps. We've seen only a fraction of their capabilities. If we respond without understanding the network, we'll be reacting, not leading." Her mind raced, running simulations in real time, calculating every variable: drone speed, reaction time, communication latency, potential and environmental factors. Every factor was critical, and the margin for error was minuscule. She called an immediate meeting with the squadron. "Listen carefully," said, her tone sharp and precise. "We've intercepted the drones successfully, but that was just reconnaissance. The true threat is larger, more coordinated, and potentially armed. Our job isn't just to fly, we need to anticipate, strategize, and neutralize the operator behind this network. It's a combination of engineering analysis and tactical precision. If we fail, civilians and national assets are at risk." The pilots listened intently, absorbing her every word, walked them through the drone network, explaining how adaptive AI was being supplemented by human oversight. She demonstrated potential attack vectors, showing weaknesses in the operator's algorithms that could be exploited. She explained how predictive models could simulate the operator's decisions, allowing the squadron to anticipate moves before they occurred in real space. By the end of the briefing, the squadron had a clear understanding of the stakes, the strategy, and the role each pilot would play in executing it flawlessly. His own role was dual. She would fly, intercepting drones directly when necessary, and coordinate the squadron's maneuvers in real time, integrating predictive modeling with human decision-making. It was a balance she had mastered years ago, but had not exercised in a while. Every command, every maneuver would be executed with precision, and every second could determine the mission's success. Late that night, returned to her quarters, mentally preparing for the days ahead. She ran simulations in her mind, anticipating scenarios, contingencies, and unexpected variables. Civilian life felt distant now, a quiet echo compared to the intensity of what lay ahead. She thought about the rogue operator, someone brilliant, daring, and dangerous. Outthinking them would require every ounce of experience she possessed, but thrived under pressure. This challenge, immense as it was, sparked the same exhilaration she had felt in her first supersonic flight. In every classified mission she had executed flawlessly. The next morning the squadron assembled for a pre-flight briefing. Strategy was comprehensive: staggered intercepts, layered formations, predictive maneuvers, electronic countermeasures, and contingency protocols. Each pilot had a clearly defined role, yet flexibility was critical. Emphasized adaptability, urging them to trust instincts while following her guidance. She highlighted the potential consequences of error. Any miscalculation could allow the drones to regroup, escalate, or strike critical targets. Focus, trust, and precision were paramount. As the squadron suited up, reviewed each aircraft herself, checking systems, calibrating sensors, and ensuring readiness. Pilots observed her meticulous routine, nodding her calm but intense focus. She moved with authority, demonstrating that preparation and attention to detail could mean the difference between success and disaster. The pilots, inspired and reassured, followed her lead. The squadron was no longer just a team. They were a cohesive unit, guided by a legend they now fully recognized: Eagle One. Finally climbed into her F-22, strapping in with practiced ease. Engines ignited, the familiar vibration coursing through her body like a heartbeat. She felt alive in a way that civilian life had never provided: the thrill of command, the intensity of preparation, and the responsibility of protecting lives. Radar lit up with drone signals, each one representing a potential threat, but also an opportunity. His mind raced, calculating intercept paths, predicting moves, and preparing strategies in real time. "Eagle One to squadron," she said, voice steady and commanding. "This is more than a flight mission. It's a test of skill, strategy, and coordination. Remember your training, trust your instincts, and follow my lead. We neutralize this threat today, not just the drones, but the operator behind them. Let's move." The Raptors lifted into the clear Nevada sky, engines screaming, wings cutting through the wind with lethal precision. Led the formation, every maneuver calculated, every command precise. The squadron followed flawlessly, executing staggered climbs, banking arcs, and rapid intercepts. Above, the rogue drones darted, adaptive and unpredictable, but predictive strategies guided the pilots in real time, neutralizing each threat methodically. As the first wave was intercepted, his mind raced toward the next phase, identifying the operator, predicting further deployments, and ensuring civilian safety. The mission was far from over, but for the first time the squadron felt they were not reacting, they were leading. And at the center of it all, Carter, civilian by appearance, Eagle One by destiny, was fully in command, ready to confront the hidden threat and restore order to the skies. The Nevada sky was a brilliant canvas of azure as Carter led the squadron into formation, engines screaming in unison. The sun reflected sharply off the sleek fuselages of the F-22 Raptors, each plane a predator poised for engagement. Above, the rogue drones had reappeared, swarming in tight, coordinated formations, their small metallic frames glinting in sunlight. This was the culmination of weeks of preparation, the moment where strategy, skill, and instinct would collide. His pulse surged not from fear but exhilaration. She was ready. Eagle One was ready. Squadron, maintain echelon formation. His voice cut through the comms, calm and commanding. Visual on drones confirmed. Target engagement protocols in effect. Trust your training, anticipate, execute. Her eyes flicked across the HUD, analyzing every drone's trajectory, speed, and orientation. Every second was critical. One misstep could allow the operator controlling these drones to exploit weaknesses, endangering civilian populations and military installations alike. Captain Jason followed closely, trusting her implicitly. Copy, Eagle One. Formation stable. Weapons systems armed. Around them, the pilots moved as extensions of his mind, responding to commands and anticipating maneuvers she had calculated in real time. The synergy between them was flawless, born from trust, training, and the recognition of her legendary skill. The drones reacted aggressively, breaking formation, accelerating unpredictably, adjusted instantly, issuing split-second commands. Upper quadrant, intercept vector 4, evasive maneuvers delta, Jason, flank on my 6, coordinate laser targeting. Her words were concise, precise, and rehearsed in simulations, but in this moment, reality amplified the stakes. She felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, the one that had guided her through years of supersonic flight and combat missions. One drone broke off, darting toward a civilian testing site below. His mind raced. She banked sharply, executing a precision maneuver that put her directly in its path. Missiles locked, countermeasures activated, and within seconds the threat was neutralized. The squadron watched, inspired by her composure under extreme pressure. Each pilot mirrored her decisiveness, each movement synchronized with her calculations. But the operator controlling the drones was clever, adapting faster than expected. Multiple drones converged from unexpected angles, attempting to trap the formation in crossfire. Analyzed, calculated, and adjusted. Split formation, left quadrant climb, active countermeasures engaged, maintain visual contact and predict next movement. Her commands were met instantly, pilots executing without hesitation. Felt the challenge in her bones. The drone's AI was sophisticated, but the operator was human, predictable in subtle ways. Every maneuver, every adjustment, every split-second reaction could be anticipated with enough observation and analysis. Combined expertise in flight dynamics, AI systems, and tactical strategy gave her an edge no conventional pilot had. She led the squadron in a series of rapid ascents, dives, and precision rolls, forcing the drones into predictable paths while minimizing risk. Target acquired, she said, eyes locked on a rogue cluster. Jason, intercept. Flank right, we neutralize this wave now. The pilots executed flawlessly, missiles locking, countermeasures synchronized, and one by one, the drones fell out of formation, neutralized without causing harm. Suddenly, the operator escalated tactics, deploying a high-speed swarm in a tight formation, coordinated to test the squadron's limits, calculated the vectors instantly. Engage in synchronized dive, maintain staggered altitude, predictive targeting active, don't break formation. Pilots banked sharply, their F-22s slicing through the air like silver knives, anticipating each maneuver. Within moments, the high-speed swarm was countered, neutralized by a combination of missile deployment, electronic disruption, and precise maneuvers coordinated by. The sky was now scattered with debris from the drones, spinning harmlessly toward the desert floor, guided the squadron into a secure pattern, scanning for any residual threats. Radar confirmed the operator's network had been disrupted. Their ability to coordinate and adapt was diminished. Knew they had not only succeeded in defense, but had also forced the adversary to retreat or rethink their strategy. Jason broke the silence over comms. Eagle One, that was incredible. I've never flown a mission like that. We've. His words trailed, awe-evident, cut in, steadying his tone. We've completed the engagement, yes, but the mission isn't over. Keep scanning, maintain formation. We need to ensure all threats are neutralized before returning to base. Her calm authority reinforced focus, preventing any premature relaxation. The squadron maintained their vigil, sweeping the airspace with precision. Eyes constantly monitored the HUD, her mind running predictive simulations, ready for unexpected maneuvers. Every potential threat was considered, every contingency planned. She felt the familiar thrill of control, the pulse of responsibility, and the clarity of command. The pilot she had been, the legend known as Eagle One, was fully present, guiding, executing, protecting. After hours of precise maneuvers and careful engagement, radar confirmed the rogue drones were neutralized, their control network disrupted. Guided the squadron back toward the base, engines roaring triumphantly. The desert below stretched endlessly, the once threatened civilian areas untouched, safe. Pilots relaxed slightly, the tension replaced by relief and quiet admiration. Strategy, experience, and calm decisiveness had saved lives, neutralized threats, and validated her legendary reputation. Once back on the ground, the squadron taxied their Raptors toward the hangar, engines cooling, pilots exchanging nods of respect and gratitude. Jason approached, eyes reflecting awe. Eagle One, you didn't just lead, you saved them. Every life, every operation, everything worked because of you. His response was measured. It worked because we worked as a team. You all executed perfectly. I guided, but you followed with precision. That's what makes this work. That's what keeps people safe. In the debriefing room, analyzed the engagement with the squadron, reviewing maneuvers, engagement sequences, and predictive strategies. She highlighted every critical decision, every split-second maneuver, and the lessons learned. Pilots listened intently, absorbing insights from a leader whose expertise transcended ordinary experience. Eagle One was no longer a name whispered in legend. She was a living, breathing commander whose actions had saved lives and demonstrated unparalleled skill. As night fell over the Nevada desert, stepped outside, looking at the airfield bathed in moonlight. The F-22s rested silently, shadows stretching long across the tarmac. The rogue threat was neutralized for now, but new vigilance was eternal. She had returned as a civilian, underestimated, almost overlooked, and yet she had led, guided, and commanded with precision and courage. The legend of Eagle One had not only survived, it had thrived. Allowed herself a brief smile. The skis were safe tonight. The squadron trusted her fully, and she knew that when the call came again, she would rise not just as a civilian or engineer, but as Eagle One, ready to defend, anticipate, and lead. The desert wind brushed her face, carrying the faint scent of fuel and ozone, a reminder that the sky was hers to command once more. The following morning, the Nevada desert shimmered in the early sunlight, a quiet contrast to the chaos of the previous day. Carter stood at the edge of the tarmac, the cool breeze tugging at her jacket, as she watched the F-22 Raptors gleam under the rising sun. The squadron, now fully synchronized and confident, moved with precision across the airfield, ready for inspection, maintenance, and routine flights, but knew that yesterday's engagement had changed everything. The rogue drones were neutralized, the operator's control disrupted, and the team had witnessed firsthand the skill and leadership of Eagle One. Inside the base was summoned to a secure briefing room. Pentagon officials, intelligence officers, and senior Air Force commanders waited. Their faces were solemn but tinged with relief. His role in neutralizing the rogue drones was already the subject of glowing reports, and now the officials intended to review the operation in full, assess the threats, and recognize the squadron's efforts. His pulse was steady. She had always preferred action to accolades, but she knew recognition was part of validating the sacrifices and risks everyone had taken. A senior official cleared his throat. Carter, or Eagle One as you're known to many, your actions have not only protected civilian populations and military assets, but also prevented a potential escalation of drone warfare on U.S. soil. Your leadership, strategy, and execution were exemplary. We would like to formally recognize your contributions. Nodded, acknowledging the gravity without vanity. It was a team effort, she said, her voice calm, commanding respect naturally. Every pilot, every crew member, every support personnel executed their roles flawlessly. I only guided the plan. They carried it out. Documents were presented, commendations signed, and formal recognition prepared. History, as Eagle One once whispered as legend, was now officially and honored. The squadron's confidence in her abilities had transformed skepticism into unwavering trust. The younger pilots, some barely out of training, looked at her with admiration that went beyond skill. They saw courage, decisiveness, and a calm clarity forged in the crucible of experience. After the briefing returned to the hangar, pilots gathered, buzzing with a mix of relief, pride, and lingering adrenaline. Jason approached, a rare smile crossing his face. Eagle One, he said, you didn't just lead us, you inspired us. Today, every pilot here knows what it means to follow someone like you. Met his gaze, her own eyes reflecting quiet pride. You did it yourselves. I only showed the path. The courage and execution were yours. Despite the accolades, mind remained sharp. The rogue drone operator had been disrupted, but not fully identified. Intelligence indicated the individual was part of an international network of rogue engineers and hackers with access to cutting-edge AI technology. Studied the decrypted communications, analyzing patterns, signatures, and subtle traces of human oversight. The operator was clever, perhaps brilliant, but not infallible. With the squadron's support and the resources of the Pentagon, she began outlining strategies to prevent future incursions and to trace the network back to its source. Even in civilian life, knew the balance between vigilance and normalcy. She returned to her quarters briefly, reflecting on her journey. Once she had lived quietly, blending into civilian society, her extraordinary skills concealed from the world. Now she was recognized officially, her past no longer a secret, her legend. Eagle One was more than a call sign. It was a responsibility, a legacy she carried forward, not just for herself, but for the next generation of pilots and engineers. Later, convened a debrief with the squadron. She reviewed every maneuver, every split-second decision, highlighting what went right and identifying areas for improvement. She emphasized adaptability, situational awareness, and teamwork. The pilots hung on her every word, absorbing lessons from someone who had operated at the very edge of human and technological capability. They realized that the skills, discipline, and clarity she exhibited weren't just tactical, they were inspirational. In the final debrief, addressed the team directly. Today, we showed what can be achieved when experience, training, and trust come together. The drones were neutralized, the operator disrupted, and civilians protected. But the real lesson is this: preparation, precision, and leadership are what matter most. Never underestimate the importance of observation, analysis, and decisive action. That's how Eagle One operates, and that's how you all succeeded as a team. The squadron acknowledged her words with nods, applause, and quiet respect. For many, this was more than a mission. It was a life-defining experience. Guidance had transformed them from skilled pilots into a unified, strategic, and responsive force capable of handling threats no ordinary squadron could face. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, walked along the edge of the runway, reflecting on the past days. The desert stretched endlessly, quiet now, almost serene. Yet she knew vigilance was eternal. Rogue threats, technological challenges, and unforeseen dangers would always arise. But Carter, civilian by appearance and Eagle One by destiny, was ready. She had proven that experience, intellect, and courage could turn the tide against even the most sophisticated adversaries. Later, the media, cleared for selective reporting, highlighted the squadron's successful operation, carefully acknowledging the leadership of Eagle One. Her identity as Carter was finally connected to the legend that had inspired whispers among pilots and military personnel for years. Stories of her past missions, her precision, and her tactical genius circulated publicly, cementing her reputation as a figure of extraordinary skill and unwavering dedication. Back at the base, stood before the F-22s one last time that evening. Engines silent, shadows long, she ran her fingers along the fuselage of her jet. Memories of countless missions, decades of training, and countless moments of precision flashed through her mind. Civilian life had once felt like a choice, a reprieve. Now she understood that her skills, her instincts, and her legacy demanded acknowledgement and action. She was Eagle One, recognized, respected, and ready for whatever came next. As night fell fully over the Nevada desert looked skyward. Stars glittered like distant beacons, the sky infinite and untamed. Somewhere out there, threats waited, rogue operators, advanced AI, and unforeseen dangers, but she was ready. Eagle One was not just a call sign, it was a responsibility, a symbol of leadership, skill, and vigilance. And Carter, bridging the gap between civilian and legend, would remain ready, guiding, leading, and soaring above challenges, protecting those who could not protect themselves. In the silence of the desert night, one thought crystallized in her mind. She had returned, underestimated, almost overlooked, but she had proven that legends never fade. They endure, adapt, and rise when the world needs them most. And Eagle One was, forever, ready to take flight again.